Hi, I'm Regan Robinson, your host of Future Fit, the only podcast unraveling the secrets of how the world's most innovative leaders stay future ready in a fast-paced world. I've spent over 20 years as a futurist and strategist, transforming top global brands and putting investment-backed startups on paths to sustainable growth. Along the way, I've become obsessed with new ways to prepare for the future, because thinking about the long term once a year simply isn't enough. In each episode, I talk with movers, shakers, and path breakers who share their stories about how they turn uncertainty into their strategic advantage. Throughout our journey, we'll discover unconventional and imaginative ways to help you thrive today while leading your teams into tomorrow. Future Fit leaders know that being prepared for what's next is more than a business decision. It's a way of being. Let's venture together as we co-create a new future readiness playbook. The future can't wait, and neither can I. So, are you ready to get future fit? All right, here we go. So today I'm thrilled to welcome Grant Ecker, a visionary leader in enterprise architecture and digital transformation. He's known for his innovative approach to aligning technology with business strategy as vice president and chief enterprise architect at Danaher Corporation, a leading life sciences and diagnostics innovator that's committed to accelerating the power of science and technology to improve human health. Grant is also an executive coach and founder and chairman of the Chief Architect Forum, one of the largest communities for chief architect thought leaders globally. He sits on the board of Women in Architecture and is an editorial board member of CDO magazine, which gives a voice to global leaders in strategic data management and analytics capabilities that form the foundation and core of the digital age. So welcome to the show, Grant.
So thrilled to be here. You hear it all, right? It's kind of cool.
Well, I'm glad you liked that. Well, I am so excited to chat. And I would love to kick off our conversation with something that I ask all of my guests, which is, what does future ready mean to you?
I think it's a mindset. I think it's about being ready to embrace change, being open-minded, being ready to challenge what you thought was true in the past. I love to call that firm beliefs loosely held, right? Until somebody shows you something that's a little bit different, you can be really firm in your belief, but always open and agile to what's next.
I love that. And it's almost like you're reading my notes, because that's a beautiful segue, because as I like to say, future readiness is a state of being, right? It's not just about possessing skills and knowledge, but it's about cultivating that mindset, right? That embraces change and innovation and lifelong learning. So I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you prepare yourself mentally for future-oriented, out-of-the-box thinking?
Well, I think it's the little cues we get. It's somebody who you expect to see nodding furiously, and instead they're pausing, or they're looking away, or they're thinking. It's usually other people. And I'm like, hey, wait, there's something here. I thought you'd be chiming in and you're pausing. What's going on? That's the moment to me where the catalyst can kind of take hold and some new idea can enter your head. It's usually people that make that transformation happen. It's not something I read a book. Like, it's usually an interaction.
I love that. Well, I actually have a little shorthand for that when I have that actual reaction myself. So I'm going to date myself here, but I call it the things that make you go, So from the 1990 CNC Music Factory song.
Playing in my head right now.
Yes. So when I start to that song goes in my head, I'm like, oh, that is, so I'm intentional. When I start to feel that, that's when my imagination is sparked, my curiosity is sparked, and I want to explore more, which it sounds like you have a similar reaction. I love that. So you've spoken about the importance of resilient teams built on a foundation of continuous change. And obviously resilience is a hot topic, right? I recently read in Forbes that 46% of leaders lack resilience for 2024. despite 97% of executives recognizing the importance of building resilient companies when facing future disruption. So first, this kind of makes me wonder what's going on here, but how do you define resilience, and what are some of the ways that you cultivate it personally and or amongst your team when facing future disruption?
Honestly, it's a great question. But first, I'll point to the first thing you said, which I thought was really interesting, that there's that number of people that know they need to change and aren't. And to me, it's sort of like smoking, right? We might want to quit smoking, but we don't want to quit smoking. We want a cigarette. So that volition level of change leadership to me, I think is so important, that you have that second order want. I want to be a change advocate. I want to be a futurist. And that desire makes us then step into the actual actions to make that shift. And there's a reason that more than 50% of people think they're a better than average driver. That's the other side of it too, right? So there's a wonderful piece of work you can look up on YouTube called Dress the Knight, Play the Dragon, that is really about building your resiliency as a coaching approach for your client. But you can use it in the inside. And really, you have to codify the triangle around the resilience you're trying to create to make it timely right now. What has allowed you to tolerate not being resilient in this space up to this point? Why is this a focus right now? Why do I need this resilience in this space, in this moment? What am I willing to give up to be able to show up in this way? And as I dress the night with that information, I'm ready to bring it into action and take those things forward to truly step into that desire.
Interesting. I love that approach because it's around prioritization, and I think a lot of it might even come down to like stress management. I think people don't really realize the connection between resiliency and like how important it is to manage your stress, because then we go into sort of, fear and ego, which is, which we're going to get into in a bit around that kind of mindset. But I love that. I love that. So now let's talk about the idea of continuous change. Change is hard, as the saying goes, right? Although I think this is something to be debunked, but that's a conversation for another day. So
Right.
what kind of continuous change are you preparing for in your work? And what has been either the most challenging about it or even the most surprising?
Having to reinvent, right? Like you're given a charter and then things change. And the problem you generally have in a work environment is your objectives are set annually. And you want us that you have these things in your punch card that you need to achieve. So a relationship with your leader, and also an adaptability to notice the company needed me here when we were in January, but actually come June, the target is moved. And as a future focused leader, we need to be going to, as a Minnesotan, where the puck is going, right? As opposed to where it is right now. So I think always monitoring and noticing what's happening in the market. And like last year when AI landed, it was in no one's objectives in January, but boy, was it by the end of the year.
Right.
Stepping into those things and putting a little extracurricular time into it to test your assumptions. This is something that's going to be a focus. Starting to influence interest from leaders, including your direct leadership, but beyond. So you can build a little bit of groundswell to start to bring your objectives to a more stronger alignment to what we're seeing in the market.
And I'm curious because I do sense that, I mean, part of the big, challenge or friction is, we are, the friction between short term and long term. And so do you have anything that you do specifically around, okay, well, I have all these annual things that I've got to hit, but I need to keep my team, on par continuously? Is there anything that you do that you found that works or even maybe doesn't work?
Oh, absolutely. As a leader of a group, you need to be thinking quarters and years ahead so that you can think about what does somebody need to have in Q1. So when I want to execute a change with them in Q3, we're ready. So we would activate architects and have a bit of a gathering, even an in-person meetup for people all around the globe to discuss an initiative and to talk about what's important to us. Because I know I want to activate them in 2 quarters to actually start to action some of those ideas. And we actually did a couple of those last year. And it's amazing how kind of incubating and sort of planting the seeds allows us to actually drive change when we need to. Because if you're thinking about it and you want to move that same week or that same month, people aren't with you. And then it's your idea, and it requires a lot more pull and a lot more push than just kind of harmoniously walking a path we've carved together.
I love that. I love that. And what you're talking about is one of my biggest bugaboos, if I may pull out a nerdy word, is the idea of proactivity.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about being proactive, and I'm still shocked, like gobsmacked at the amount of leaders who are just stuck in reactive mode. And so the fact that you're able to do that gives me hope. So I like to say prevention is better than cure. That's true for your health, but it's also true for your company, right? And it's this, proactivity that really is a strategic advantage. So
I think there's also something to consider there around not everybody has to be like completely fluid, right? There are roles that are more aligned to strategy and there are roles more aligned to execution. So there's space for everyone here. If you actually would prefer to have more of a consistent, structured approach in your day, there's a wonderful place on the back half of the strategy to execution cycle where you can add value every day. You might be looking at changes, though, as you go from program to program. So there's something here for everyone.
yeah, well, and what you just hit on is one of my favorite things, which is you're talking about an abundance mindset, right? And I think that is one of the biggest challenges also that happens. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is stuff that's happening in the mind, which is a great segue for my next question. So now I love that you are an executive coach. I often joke that if every knowledge worker had a psychotherapist and an executive coach, we could all go working to a 3-day work week. Seriously, I'm not kidding. But I'm sure that being an executive coach really gives you some unique insights into the minds of leaders and what they're really thinking about or struggling with. And so I'm curious, what are the most common patterns or behaviors that you kind of see getting in the way of executives being future oriented?
One word, fear. There is nothing we should be afraid of in this life. Nothing. Be yourself. You only get to be on this planet once. Go after it with full force. And for the things that are causing you to be afraid of what you want in life, the way to success there is to double down and figure out what is the root of that fear. And sometimes, as you mentioned, a psychologist or a coach, that's where I play a role, as I try to help people find that fear, localize it, and kind of understand, okay, that happened. Yeah, you lost. Everybody thought you didn't know what you were talking about. Oh, gosh. And then your reputation fell broader. And then you got fired. And then you ran out of money and couldn't pay your mortgage. And after a while, you go further and further down this story. And you're like, you sort of realize yourself, this isn't real. First of all, if I did lose my job, I'd get another one. And like so, right? So I think the process of getting ourselves out of a fear mindset, out of a control mindset, and into a creative, playful discovery pursuit of our life's dreams is what allows us to show up as our best self. And ironically, those behaviors that are designed to protect us of fear are usually the things that are keeping us and holding us back from the things we really want out of life.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, I personally am fascinated with the brain. And I think once people start to understand how actually it works against us, like, I don't want to say it's not our fault, but there are nearly 200 cognitive biases that we're up against that influence, decision making and thinking about the future. Like that sheer number should teach us some humility that what's happening up here. It's like there's a lot going on. And I think, and you talked about assumptions. I think that's a big part of it. And so I love that you recognize the importance of like identifying these assumptions and these stories that we're telling ourselves and saying, okay, wait, that's not actually true. But if you don't have the awareness of it, you don't actually realize that could be getting in the way of your future. I love that. That is beautiful. So one of the many things I love about executive coaching is that it is about unlocking, one's potential, which I think is intrinsically tied to the future, because I think of the future as imagination and possibilities. So what are some of the ways that you take what you do as an executive coach and bring it into your role at Danaher? I mean, I know you talked about some things that you do with your team, but is there anything else that you can share that might be interesting or helpful?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot actually, because the coaching, you might think, why would a chief architect certify to become a coach? Is it just a life pursuit? Is that a personal thing? Yes, it is, absolutely. And as the chief architect of an organization, you have two roles. The first role is to be the chief coach for the technical community, 200 plus brilliant minds of people that look across and beyond their space, connecting the dots and trying to help them find their strength and help them appreciate one another, right? A lot of times these folks have decent sized egos and they're earned through the battles of war they've been through. But the problem is they meet another architect or another thought leader, and they've been in different battles and earned their stripes in different wars. And a lot of times folks don't necessarily see the value of the person across the table or appreciate their perspective. So there's a huge coaching focus to try to create empathy and understanding across architecture leaders. And that also translates to when I work upwards across an executive suite of either IT leaders or even in the business. It's about being the chief family counselor, right? Mm-hmm. It's about connecting them to the points of resonance that they have together, to the points of challenge that they have together, and helping them find their common ground. Because oftentimes we focus on where we're different when we have so much more we can build when we focus on where we're the same.
I love that. I just, as you're talking, what I'm picturing is like, you're like the Oprah of the company. People are coming to you.
Maybe in IT, you get a car and you get a car. I don't quite get that kind of budget though, unfortunately.
Well, you never know. The future's wide open, right? But I just, as you were talking, I got so excited because I feel, what an amazing gift you are to everyone, and to really impart this sort of knowledge and to connect these dots and get people. People talk a lot, again, empathy is another word that's thrown around in business media everywhere, but what does that actually mean? So I think that's
one thing I want to point to that sounds a little odd in what you just said. The gift word is extremely kind, but I think it's very important that as we engage in this role that we follow the trust equation, right? And I'm not going to remember it perfectly. This wasn't something I prepared, but you've got the trust equation of intimacy, of providing that value and content, of really building that that relationship, and you divide that by your self-interest, and you could also say self-importance. So as you are doing these activities for yourself, you are lowering your trust, you are lowering your value to the people around you. So I think it's incredibly important that as we engage in these roles, it's with a culture and a mindset of service to others, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's not about what I can do or how wonderful I am. It's how I can make the people around me more successful and how I can leverage their relationships with their peers to further amplify that success. That to me isn't just a statement of how to win at work, it's how to win at life. It's what I care about and the purpose I want to have on this planet.
Yeah, I love that. That was a beautiful articulation. And I'm also a big proponent of leading with generosity. I just think that is, it does it when you embody that, that your energy and your vibe and the way that you move through the world is very different. And then, people do trust you. I often have gotten shocked over the years around what people are willing to tell me that I have just met. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe you actually told me that. But it's because I do operate from a place of generosity and how I can support you. And so that's even a helpful reminder for me. So I appreciate you double clicking under that. So you and I had a back and forth about the importance of a growth mindset versus a fear and control mindset. And this has come up already, which goes hand in hand with change and innovation. And so I'm curious, in your experience, how has a fear and control mindset impacted decision-making and innovation within your company, especially when facing uncertainties about the future?
I think a lot of it is the behaviors of other leaders, right? As that uncertainty lands, And it's not just the fear you carry, it's the fear those around you carry, right? So that starts to expand. And this is where empathy is so important, to sit down with the leader that might be blocking an important change or challenging from what you perceive to be a place of fear. Don't assume you're right, number one. Step into that with curiosity, right? Look to learn. It's just like I mentioned as we started this conversation about that, hey, wait, you didn't clap or you didn't chime in, you paused at the thing I thought we'd all agree on. This is a moment to get incredibly curious, to step in, seek to understand, and don't give up until you do. Because in general, I actually have not yet found an example where there wasn't a perspective I wasn't further fully gathering and understanding at the time I saw that unexpected pushback. So just come in with a kind heart and an open mind and seek to understand, and you'll start to unravel some of those barriers.
I love that. Amazing. You're making me feel all warm and fuzzy right now. Tell me more, Grant. It's amazing. So I want to shift gears a little bit. And,
Sure.
so Danaher is obviously a company that is pioneering what's next. I think that's like one of your taglines, which I was like, I love that. So
innovation at the speed of life.
Yes,
that's the new one with the new logo. I love it.
I saw that as well. So what methods and tools do you use personally or with your team to anticipate and prepare for the future?
I use quite a bit of scanning of the industry trends. Frankly, one of the reasons I founded the Chief Architect Forum was to be able to be with my peers without a vendor and trying to give me a sandwich and listen to a pitch and hope I meet my peer through asking questions at the same time. It's very hard to get the insight I need in those kind of captive environments. So that's why we created the Chief Architect Forum. So it's about getting a group of other thought leaders together, sharing our insights, and starting to build little focused areas of collaboration. So we can step into, is it going to be the AI space, or we look at the metaverse, which is now kind of combining with our digital twin concepts and creating some pretty interesting applications in the manufacturing space. And these are the kind of insights you might develop on your own, but it's far faster if you can kind of say, what do you think is interesting and what's happening in your space with peers? Because then you can localize, codify, and then also when you try to action these things, you can name the other size and industries of organizations that are doing the same thing, and even potential leaders come in and connect with your internal leaders to help them understand what they're seeing in their different organizations.
It sounds like you're doing a form of super forecasting, as we futurists call it.
It's a forum of futurists, kind of. I mean, so very much. And
I
it
love
is funny
that.
though when we try to out future each other. It's like it's a little silly sometimes.
Hey, well, that's why I always say future is a verb and not a noun. It's not a place, but it's futuring, because you are always futuring. It never actually stops. So foresight is actually the discipline that we futurists use to empower leaders and companies to pioneer what's next. And research actually shows that companies with a dedicated foresight and methodology and resources are 33% more profitable and achieve a 200% higher growth rate than the average company that doesn't. When I share those data points with people, they're like, what? I really tend to get their attention with that. And so operationalizing foresight also has the benefit of enhancing your team's imagination and innovation capacity, and it elevates strategic agility and resilience. Yet, kind of to what we were talking about earlier, many companies are stuck in the present, responding to today's changes. So I'm curious, what challenges have you faced with investing and deploying some of these futures thinking or long-term thinking sort of to drive your innovation efforts? Like what have you been challenged with across the organization, and how have you addressed them?
Major challenge with any great idea is time and conflicting incentives to achieve it. So if you have multiple pressures in an organization and your performance plan has X, Y, and Z on it, and this is a new thing that isn't on there, as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the primary obstacles, and it's there for a reason, because we as an organization, and any organization, don't want to start to see our people distracted. We want to give them a clear path to success in their year. So that means having some defined goals. That's where it becomes a hindrance, though, when you start to run into future focus. Also, you can find that the vision might not be the same across everybody, right? And there might be a future that's right for the overall organization, but that could actually hurt one or two of the operating companies or the segments in the business that would be needed to achieve that. So again, I hate to say this, but it is a lot of family counseling. You got to bring people together and find the common synergy or throw the idea out together because we can't get there from here. It's all about alignment. If you have alignment, then the rest of it can come into play. Leaders can align their objectives, change them. Folks can free up time. But if you don't have alignment and you don't have, I guess the other one would be prioritization. We might think it's a great idea, but just gosh darn it, we can't get to it this quarter or next quarter or the quarter after that, frankly, because we have this very important business imperative. So those are the things where if it isn't meeting that level, it's always a deferral. Are we staffed to the right level? Is this thing as big of a deal as we think it is? What is the risk to the organization if we don't do this thing? And is there a clear and present danger to be the next blockbuster, right? If we don't make a shift. So I think that's the kind of work we have to do to codify the case for change and to bring people along in the journey, or let that ship sail and go after the next one. If you just simply can't get the organization on board, don't keep beating the drum. Find another way, find another door, find another approach.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as you're talking, what's coming up for me too is just we're talking about some fundamentals. And I feel like, I don't know if it's because there's just so many books out there and like methodologies and like there's so much noise. But I mean, a lot of what you're talking about is quite beautiful and it's simplicity. And it is, a lot of it is about going back to the fundamentals, right? Around, what we know actually works, but maybe people are just completely forgetting about.
I mean, you don't have to. There is still one blockbuster in Alaska that's open. I mean, there is another choice. It's just probably not the path we want to take.
Yes. Now I'm curious. As soon as we finish, I'm going to look to see if there's a blockbuster.
I think there were 2 or 3 last time I looked. I'm curious if there still is.
Well, I'm from Springfield, Ohio, and there is a video store there. When I'm home, and we go by, and I'm like, "How is this place still open?"
How is it here? Yeah, it's amazing.
To each their own. To each their own. So, before I get to my sort of final 2 questions, was there anything that you were hoping that we would talk about that I didn't ask about, or anything you want to revisit before we say our final few comments?
No, this has been super harmonious. I'm not like trying to slide in another comment or make a left turn. We're just chugging right down the highway. It's great.
I love it. Harmony is one of my favorite words, Grant. So a final question before you share where people can find you. So how much do you think preparing for the future is about avoiding risk versus seizing opportunity?
Well, I think if folks have been listening for a while, they know how I'm going to answer this one. Carpe diem, right? It's all about seize the day. So I think that's absolutely what we have to do. I think very few are able to achieve innovation through fear and protective behaviors. It can be done. You can be second, right? Because I can't let them win. I've got to get that solution out there first. Okay. That can be a competitive a pressure that can get you there, but I find it to be secondary in its outcomes to what you can do if you truly go for it.
I love that. Be bold, right?
Be bold.
Now's the time for boldness. I'm down with you on that. So, and with that, where can people go to find more about you and your work?
Absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn. I love the platform. It's a great way to connect and to share. I put something out there just about every day. And for those listening who might be chief architects, go to chiefarchitectforum.org, where there's a website, a link to apply to join. We'd love to have that community continue to grow so that we can get a larger group of futurists and complete our vision and knowing what that future is.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and your powerful insights today, Grant. It has been fun and a real pleasure to speak with you.
Absolutely. And thank you to you. It's been a pleasure being a part of your show.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Future Fit. If you're listening, you're probably future curious. So follow me in my newsletter on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going and share your discoveries with the Future Fit community. And if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, rate, and review Future Fit on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time.